All right, so just give a few more seconds before we begin. Okay, so it's officially 6:35. Thank you, everyone, for spending your evening with us. The purpose of this meeting is to teach Sherman Park residents and other residents as well about what open records are and how to access them. We have two staff members from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel who are going to give us a presentation on how to do that before we turn it over to them. Deborah Ford Lewis, she was a former chairperson of the SPCA, and she will be talking to you briefly about the proposed Sherman Park NID. And I suppose I should introduce myself. My name is Anna Vanderhorst. I have lived in Sherman Park for going on 20 years now, and I have been part of SPCA for the last 2 years. And then Mabel, did you want to introduce yourself?
I am going to introduce myself. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Mabel Lamb. I serve as the Executive Director of the Sherman Park Community Association and also a 25-year resident of Sherman Park Community.
Hi, Mabel.
Howdy, y'all. Happy New Year.
Thank you. You too.
So without further ado, as Anna was saying, this is our regularly scheduled Housing Committee meeting, but we thought it was important to share with you how you all can also look things up regarding housing stock, ownership, all of that good stuff. We do want to make sure that you have the tools and knowledge to move forward on any of your inquiries. So I'm going to shoot this back over to Anna.
All right, thank you, Mabel. The Journal, I think you're up.
My name is Ashley Lutheran. I'm a reporter and deputy editor at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. I've been at the paper since 2013, and I cover a lot of criminal justice and public safety kind of topics, so that if you have read the paper, you might have seen my name associated with some of that. I'd like to have Mary introduce herself real quick, if that's okay, Mary, if you can unmute.
Of course. My name is Mary Spicuzza. I'm a reporter with Milwaukee Journal Sentinel on the investigative and political teams. I started in 2015. Before that, I was covering the Capitol for Wisconsin State Journal for about 6 years. And I'm from Milwaukee originally. And I don't know if anybody in Sherman Park knows Coach Spicuzza from Washington High, but that's my dad. And lots of longtime MPS kids, so lots of MPS teachers in my family.
So we are just a quick way of backstory. Last March, our team decided that we wanted to share what we know about public records, because we often hear from local residents trying to just find out basic information. We use public records all the time for reporting, and this is our first time doing an all virtual presentation. So there might be some bumps in the road. I pre-apologize. We hope for it to be interactive. And so if the easiest thing I think with this group and the number of people is just to unmute and answer, or I'll try to keep an eye on the chat as well for questions, or we have some kind of question and answers about, what you think might be a public record or what might not be. And I guess with all of that, we're trying to, some of this might be very basic or some of it might be very new, but we'll just go along together and we can tailor it to anything you really want to talk about. We can go off script. Every single neighborhood presentation has been a little different so far. We've been in Amani, Metcalf, Clark Square, and they've all been a little different based off of what folks want to talk about. And forgive me, Anna, where can I share my screen to pull up the presentation?
Yes. Yep. You know that at the bottom there, that green button, the share screen button.
Oh, there it is. Perfect. Yeah. We usually use Microsoft Teams, so I'm a little out of practice with
No worries.
Okay. Let's get this going. Let me get the actual slideshow particularly.
And we can see your screen.
Okay, so I hope that's showing up well. So introduction to public records, we're going to talk about why we access them, what's a public record, where can you find them, and if you need to make a specific request, how to phrase it so you get what you want. Just a quick question. Has anyone here ever filed a public records request?
No.
No.
Has anyone here ever used something that you think might be a public record? Like an online resource? Thank you, Mary. Yes.
No.
Has anyone ever looked up someone in CCAP?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
That's a public record.
Yeah.
That's a public
Oh,
record.
okay.
Yeah. So that's the
Okay.
kind of stuff we're talking about. Public information that is accessible. Sometimes it's already available online. Sometimes you have to request it. So, you know, there are lots of reasons to access public records, but these are some of what I think are the most straightforward, and really it's your information, right? We're residents of the city of Milwaukee. It's your right to have this information. It promotes transparency and accountability with government, and you can really find very useful information in public records. And so my view is a little different here. Okay. So essentially a public record is anything that is kept by a government office to document what it's doing, right? There are some exceptions to what you can access, but you know, if a government agency is making a paper or electronic record of something, that generally falls under a public record. You might not be able to get everything you want right at the moment. Other things might be completely exempted, but for example, some common exceptions, people might request an investigative file from a police department. If that investigation is ongoing, then the request might be denied at that time. Whenever it's concluded, then it can become available again. And so I thought we could start off by asking the group if you think some of these are public records. So police body camera footage, do you think that's a public record? Anyone want to shout it out?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, it is a public record.
Hmm.
What about emails sent to or from an alderman?
Yes.
Yes.
And Mary, or I guess to the group, why might someone want to see those emails?
Huh.
I only prompt
For
that because
transparency, I guess, or
yeah,
for open, just to be open, I guess.
And-
Mary, could you elaborate a little
Yeah.
bit on some of that too?
And not just emails. I mean, emails are very helpful. In some ways, you can see if an older person is saying like, oh, I haven't gotten complaints about this property before, you can do a records request and say like, well, actually, you have gotten complaints about this property, or you got a lot of support for the
Oh.
business. Also, text messages are typically, it's not just emails, but texts, letters, and even we've been able to get text messages sent to personal phone numbers too, which sometimes aldermen or other politicians are surprised by, but if they're discussing official business on their personal phone, that is a public record as well. So we've been able to review that. Somebody, even if they're trying to
Wow.
have a side conversation by having it on their personal phone, if they're discussing the public business, that is typically a public record.
Wow.
Mhm.
Yes, and so that's another example. What do you think are concealed carry permit holder licenses? Are those a public record?
Probably.
Yes.
I think so.
No,
No.
No.
they're not a
What?
public record. And that is a carve out exemption within the law when the CCW law was passed, and I believe it was 2013. You know, people who are proponents of gun rights and concealed carry often say, you know, if there was some sort of accessible database or even public record to verify that someone has a license, that could make that person the target of burglary or perhaps robbery. And so that is an exemption in the
Oh,
public
wow.
records law. Got a couple more. Tavern licenses, public record or no?
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah.
yes,
Yes, very much so. Similarly, the property inspections and code violations.
yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. And then like addresses of a city employee, if you were to request their
No.
personnel
No.
file. No,
Absolutely
correct.
not.
Yeah, correct. And so those are just some quick examples. Oh, and I should have said this at the beginning. I will send a PDF of this full presentation and the links are active. So then you'll be able to access all of that as well. So you'll see
To
like down
whom?
here, I was gonna send it to Anna, so she
Anna?
could send it out. Yeah.
Yep. And then I can forward it to everybody who was
Great.
attending.
Thank you.
I do have a question. So the
Yeah.
addresses of a city employee. So let's say somebody works for the city and we can look at all the addresses on that block and their ownership or information may be on that tax bill.
Oh, I see.
That's a very good point, and I should specify, I should have made this example a little bit better. This was specifically if you were to request the address from the government agency where they work as part of their personnel file. That would be
Got it.
requested along with the sensitive privacy information. But you are absolutely right. There are other ways to, if you know someone independently as a city employee, to look up via property records, sometimes voting records, depending on where you are. To learn that information. And that has come up as we've, reported on public officials who, for example, are running or elected in one district, but perhaps have a different residence elsewhere. And I know Mary could speak to that. That has come up before.
Okay.
I'm
Thank you for
surprised.
clarity.
Yeah, I'm surprised that it's not public. I mean, they have the salaries listed public, so I'm really surprised.
I've
It tends-
also,
Oh, go ahead.
I've also seen in the property records, a name blurred out. Person I'm thinking of has a sensitive job. So I didn't know they could do that either. So it's
There
like
are-
redacted.
Mm-hmm. There can be some exemptions, and it's my understanding with things like property records, or for example, there's a program because of things I cover, I'm aware that there's a program, for example, through the State Department of Justice for victims of domestic violence to have a different kind of, to basically be able to mask their address and for the DOJ to help them get their mail somewhere else and have a different like listed address, as it were. So there are nuances to all of this, but in general, if you were to request a personnel file for a city employee from the agency where they work, it would redact personal information, including their address, their social security number, things like that, but it should include information relevant to their work experience and their performance on the job.
Actually, a question: when someone requests information about a city employee, does the city employee get notified?
Yes, it's actually on a
Good
later
question.
slide, but yes, they do. So in Wisconsin, there's this precedent that is named after a court case, the man who was involved, Woznicki. And so essentially when you're requesting that kind of information, and I believe it's only if it's disciplinary information, but Mary, please correct me if I'm wrong. The public employee would get a notification, and in this case also have the ability to go to circuit court and say,
Okay.
no, I don't want that information released. Almost, and the onus would be on them to prove and explain why it shouldn't be released. I'm not aware of anyone who has successfully prevailed if they've done that sort of thing. But Mary, can you chime in? Can you remember if the
No, that's
notification, I think,
right.
happens.
If it's disciplinary, I think if it's just like a keyword search where you're asking for a bunch of keywords or asking, I mean, if you're asking for someone's emails, they would know because they'd be doing keyword searches on their emails. But I think I think it's disciplinary is like the Woznicki rule of when they're I don't know if you were just saying like, I want any emails that mention this person, if they would be notified. I don't think they would, but it's, if you're asking for a disciplinary file, then yeah, they would be notified and they could try to go block it. I have had people try to block disciplinary actions, particularly it was like in the city of Milwaukee, lead crisis, when people dropped the ball on notifying the families of lead poisoned children. Some of the employees who were being punished or penalized for their conduct on that did try to block it, but they were not successful. Mhm.
Thank you.
And so, go ahead. Where do we find the public records? You can find public records online. Government agencies have gotten better over the years at providing commonly requested information just right on their websites. You can get records in person. A lot of times it is helpful to go, if possible, to go to the courthouse, for example, if you want to look at court records, purely because we'll talk about this, but the cost of copies can be quite expensive.
And time.
And so it can be helpful and save money in the long run to go look at the file and see what exactly you might want from any particular court case, for example. And then you can also make special requests, which are essentially when you write a tailored public records request asking for something specific that you can't find in these other places. Again, we will absolutely, I will share all this. These are all hyperlinked. These are some really common places where you can find public information and public records. Mary, I didn't know if you wanted to talk about one or two that you use all the time.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so just a few of them, like Legistar is very helpful to see if the Milwaukee Common Council is taking something up. And they have, you can watch on video, you can tune in, you can look at agendas to see what they'll be discussing. So that can be anything from like legislation they're talking about passing to like a police officer disciplinary hearing, although often they will go into closed meeting for some of those. Liquor licenses, development, if there's like they'll be talking about reckless driving, all kinds of things, and you can tune in live, you can look at the agendas to see what's going to be coming up. So that's really helpful. I've looked up a lot of property code violations on various websites, so you can see like if there's a fire at a house or if there's a problem at a house, what problems have been there before, or if they're real, like we'll look up problem landlords a lot, and if there are landlords where you can look at patterns of safety code violations or code violations. It's all really, really helpful.
Since Mary was, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. So yeah, can you actually show us? Can you go back to the presentation that has the hyperlinks? Yeah, could you show us how we could do like either a property search? You know, since we have a lot of housing committee members here, and we talk, you know, we tend to discuss nuisance properties. So I want the residents to see how easy it is to go online and find more information about the property.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I might usually start with the My Milwaukee Home, because that would give the information on ownership.
Right.
Usually.
Yeah. Right.
Is there any particular address we want to use? Or
A lookup, you mean?
Yep. Is there any particular? I didn't know. Sometimes people have examples of
Like a problem property or just to look up their own property or anything.
If not, I can think of an example, and just give me 1 second to look it up. But
The violations and service requests and permits, that's where I usually go.
yep, that's another spot to look. So we can look here, enforcement, licenses. I forget, Mary, does it actually require a sign-in? I don't.
No, I don't. No, it does
I don't
not.
think so.
I like to.
I sign in sometimes, but I think you can get around that.
Yeah,
But I do sometimes do the sign in.
where you were before, I think there was a link.
This one?
Yeah, like that one there, yeah. Property recording violations service requests.
Yep.
Anna, you just told
You
me
guys
that too.
know all of it. Mhm. Yeah, so
Oh,
that, okay, so that was the DNS site with the registration.
yeah.
It is, let me, hold on one second, let me pull up a property we were looking at
And I
before.
have an
Okay,
address for you to look up too.
okay, great. Let's go for it. Actually,
My
I'm,
Milwaukee home, wasn't it that one?
Right.
yes,
Yeah,
I'm
just
sorry,
go
now
back
I'm
down.
getting, I have too many tabs open. I'm cracking under the pressure.
There you go. Right. So there you go.
Okay,
The
I'm ready.
address is 2831
Mhm.
North Sherman Boulevard.
No, you
No,
gotta
you
do,
got to put the
Where,
directional.
yeah. Why is this doing it? Yeah, sorry. My screen is all messed up.
There you go.
Here.
Okay, so you
Mm.
can look through this.
Yep.
Will can take you to the different code violations, things like that. You can click into the orders typically and see what the complaint was. Sometimes
Should
under
we
the
show them, should we show them the DFI site so they can see how to look up the LLC for the owner too, maybe?
yeah, did I put that on here? I thought I did.
I can put it, I can drop it in the chat if
That would
not.
be great if you could.
Yeah,
Or,
let
I
me
think
do
it's with the
that.
business search, I think. Yeah.
Please define the acronym too, DSI.
Oh,
Oh,
sure.
mhm. Yeah, so I had it, this link is the Wisconsin Business Search, or we often
Okay.
refer to it as DFI, Department of Financial
Oh, got it.
Financial
Institutions.
institutions.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So for example, we can look up that LLC that is
Mhm.
listed as that owner, registered, they're standing. You know, they've been restored to good standing. This is helpful. You can find out where the property owner is, if it's out of the city, out of state. And then it can give you a little bit more information about how it's not, as you probably all are familiar with, it's not uncommon for LLCs to have a change of agent, to also create these nesting dolls of different LLCs. But it is a helpful tool. Again, when you get something like this where you're looking up a property record and you see, oh, it doesn't have a person, it has this business, then you can go to the business site.
Hmm.
Mary, was there anything you wanted to add on that?
Yeah, the the Department of Financial Institutions is often very helpful. I think maybe they get bored because they don't hear from people as much as others. So if you go through, you can ask, you can email them and say, like, I would like the articles of incorporation and any paperwork linked to Fountainhead Contracting LLC. And that way, you can find, like, if they changed the registered agent, who the original registered agent was. Sometimes places will or companies will try to hide their registered agent, and this came up, or they'll change it so it's like an attorney instead of someone who's directly involved. My coworker and I noticed that when we were looking up some businesses that Senator Ron Johnson owned. And we found that he was increasingly switching the registered agent from himself to one of his attorneys. But if you asked for those documents, you could go back and see who else had been listed as the registered agent. So it can be really helpful in a case of if there's a property owner who's trying to kind of hide their identity in an LLC, you can often go back and get those documents and find out the human beings linked to it.
Because there has to be, at the end of the day, at some point, there has to be a human name and a phone number associated with it. So, and then just back to the enforcement actions, again, you can find the records from DNS, Neighborhood Services, of what the complaints were originated as, if there were orders. I know sometimes I have found luck. The first one I went into did not have any of the attachments in there, but sometimes there are sometimes there are attachments that give, yes, the actual documents.
Wow.
That's a good spot to go into.
Can you open that up, Ashley, so that they can
Yep.
see? Perfect.
Mhm.
This is
So-
good. This is what gets sent to the owner.
Mhm. Yep, so this is the inspection report and the order to correct conditions. So let's see, this is talking about, you gotta correct these violations. Here's what they found. Where is the detail? Well, that's, okay, let's see, that's the official.
This one seems
notice.
empty.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe it's the, here's the residential case order violation. Let's see. Here we go. Here's what they need to correct, get the certificate of appropriateness, contact the Historic Preservation Commission, repair or replace defective handrails, that kind of thing. So again, like not all of them will have the attachments uploaded depending on the kind of violation or the steps the DNS took, but it's always good. That's under this record info. And then, like I said, you want to go to the attachments. And that's where you can get these PDFs. And so, yes, I think that is, I'm probably missing something, but I know that that's when I'm kind of looking at DNS, that's often what I'm looking for are those violations in the report. But again, as you all pointed out, the My Milwaukee Home, like it gets you lots of different details, can take you to the assessors. You can see, when it was built, valuation, the sale history, all of that. And all the other info. One thing, I wanted to mention just before I forgot, I had pulled this up, but it's on here. I'm guessing since all of you are like very active, you are probably well aware of e-Notify, but it is one of my like most favorite things about city government in Milwaukee is that there's the e-Notify system. So if you're not hooked up with that, I strongly encourage you to do it. And it gets to sort of what Mary was talking about, where you can get personalized agenda items and significant incidents sent to you for your neighborhood, for your police district, for your kind of division or region of MPS, whatever you might be interested in. There's so many good options there to just help you stay informed. Because again, that's part of the open records law, is that these meetings have to be noticed when the public business is going to be discussed. When public officials are discussing it, they could take action. They have to notice the meeting within a certain time frame, and they have to say specifically what they're going to be talking about. So that is a really good one. Also, I have 2 small children, and they might be coming upstairs to go to bed in a minute, so I might hand over to Mary in a second. It's okay, guys. And yeah, Mary, I didn't know if you wanted to real quick talk a little bit about some of where you can get records in person.
Yeah, so has anybody gone to the courthouse to get court records at all ever?
Birth certificates, but that would be the only
Okay.
thing.
Yeah, birth certificates, marriage certificates. You can also go and get documents linked to criminal cases, to civil cases. So it is a very, you can sit in and listen to a hearing or a trial. These are open courtrooms and the public is allowed. And it's really helpful. We've definitely gone and gotten both criminal and civil court records pretty regularly. Also, jail records are public. So if you're trying to figure out if somebody's been arrested linked to a case, the jail log is a public record, and you can go and see who's been taken into custody and what charges they're facing. So it's really helpful for us if we're looking into a case and trying to figure out whether they've arrested somebody or whether there's a person of interest. Those are all public records, and it's not like you have to file a records request for the jail log. You just go and ask, or for the court records, you can just go and ask. And we've definitely gone to different police districts and picked up records. There's one that's, I'm trying to remember, what is that, District 3, Ashley? So where we go and pick them up, and it's kind of a tricky turn into the building, but that's really the hardest part is like turning into the building. Getting the records is really pretty easy, especially if you file them, there might be a cost. There have been times where I've had to pay because it's like hundreds of pages of record, but often for like smaller records requests, there really is not a large, there shouldn't be a large fee for that. And you can go in person, you can file them in advance and pick them up when they're ready. Also, the medical examiner's records have been really, really helpful.
Oh, interesting.
We used them a lot during COVID. Ashley and I worked on some stories, particularly early on in COVID. We started noticing how many of the early deaths were African Americans in Milwaukee, and we started looking at the racial disparities of the pandemic very early on, and we were able to see how redlining and segregation and other factors who was dying from COVID, and that was all because of medical examiner records, and partly also because Milwaukee had declared racism a public health crisis, and they put the demographics front and center of their website, I think, to kind of own up to our history of segregation and redlining and discrimination. So that's a really
just jumping in. It looks like there might be a question too.
Oh,
so
sure.
I see a hand raised.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is just Mabel. I just wanted to ask about this Milwaukee County Courthouse complex where the deeds are. One of the things I have noticed, and probably everybody on this call living in Sherman Park, we are getting a ton of mail from investors to purchase our homes.
Yes.
They are calling us, they are sending text messages, they are sending us mail. Is there any way we can get our name? Is there like a do not call, do not bother, redacted somehow?
Yes, there is a do not call list. You're right to be very wary of those because a lot of those are scammers. And Gary Spivak, who our colleague who retired recently, and I did quite a few stories about some of the shady deed actions that were taking place with these quitclaim deeds.
Yeah.
Or like they were doing quit claims and transfer upon death deeds, and we were finding like scammers trying to sell people's houses out from under them without their knowledge.
Oh, gosh.
Quit claim deeds.
scary.
And it is scary because they can go and file this stuff and like act like they're, have some authority to sell a house. And so deeds are actually, I should have mentioned that deeds are a very, very useful public record, and those are also things that you can go to the courthouse and get look at deed transfers, or you can get quitclaim deed transfers, look at deeds, look at who's buying and selling properties, look at transfer upon death deeds. But yeah, there were some very shady operators trying to use deeds to cheat people.
But
So
to your
where
point,
can you go in?
Mabel,
I'm
oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I don't know. I mean, we could certainly ask. I'm happy to ask and follow up, but I'm not sure if there is any particular program or step to take to try to basically like the would be analogous to a do not call list as it relates to property records. Because at the end of the day, it is a public record, and it's similar to how campaigns buy voting,
Oh, yeah.
voter
for lists.
databases,
Yes.
and we all get a million text messages every campaign season. It's quite similar to that. There are some things you can do, like there are some private service, like privacy services, like Delete Me is one that we talk about and use in the newsroom ourselves. But even that's not foolproof because, you live in the world, you own property, you vote, you participate in society, like that does leave a public records trail. And so I will certainly ask over at the county to see if there's anything that can be done or any steps residents can take to try to limit that information going out. But I'm honestly not sure that there is.
Yeah, I'm just like, do not solicit. At least,
There you go.
If that was an option, that would be great. Even if it has to remain public, I understand that. But I personally, and I know a lot of people don't want to be harassed.
I don't. I
Yeah.
don't either.
Or
Yeah,
harassed.
because every time you block them, they call you with a new number.
Mhm.
It's
No, they
crazy.
do.
Mhm.
And I find that it goes in waves. Like I
Yeah.
might get 3 in a week and then none for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I sometimes get them for like my brother. I kept my maiden name, so my brother has a house on the south side, and I'll get like texts for him about whether he wants to sell his property. I'm sure they're just looking for like somebody with the last name of Spacuzza to text. And it is, yeah, it's pretty exhausting. I had a friend who said like, oh, I just write back and say I'll sell you my house for $1 million, and then they stop texting. I have not tried that, but
I have a question though. As far as the deeds, is there any way to protect your deeds? I mean, can you blur out your contact information, or is there anything that you can put on it to be notified when something is done or changed, or
that's a really
without buying LifeLock?
That's a really good question. Ashley, we should follow up on that of like if there's a way to protect your deed or get some kind of notification if somebody tries to file something linked to your address. I've not looked into that, but we definitely should because it was alarming to see one man that Carrie and I wrote about was targeting primarily like senior citizens who might not be as tech savvy where they're checking things and he was trying to sell people's houses out from under them. So I'll definitely look into that and follow up with Ashley so she can pass it along about if there's some kind of way to either protect your deed or get some kind of notification if somebody's trying to like file something linked to your address.
And I do have a question. How do you get to that website, the Milwaukee County Courthouse Complex, and go to the deed section there?
So I have typically checked deeds in person there and there was like a basement office with a really helpful worker who answered a lot of questions so I could just do computer searches. I can check and see if there's a way to do that remotely. I've only done it like from the courthouse complex. Ashley, have you looked up deeds remote?
Same. I've only looked up deeds at the courthouse complex
Okay.
because that was how like I was trained and taught to look them up. But I will say the county has been doing different things. They have been making an effort to get more records in person. They just made some changes with the court clerk's office to like have better digitize, for example, like search warrants. So it's possible things may have changed. We try to keep tabs on that, but we'll ask and look into that. And I can also provide more specific instructions like where to go in the courthouse complex because it is a maze there. There are technically 3 different buildings that are all connected. And so the civil court and the deeds, that's all in the main giant courthouse building that I believe has like the listed address on 10th or 9th. The criminal court records are in the public safety building, room 117. So I can certainly provide more specifics on that too, if that would be helpful, but we'll definitely look more into the deed information. And one way I can also say like, one way people, you know this from the records we just looked at, people do try to maybe obscure some of the ownership stuff is by creating an LLC. Like it doesn't take much to make an LLC. I do know other people who have been concerned about their privacy and, they make essentially an LLC that is just them, not really any specific business purpose, but they wanted to have their property in that name.
And if anything seems off or unusual, like you can certainly call the city or contact your alderman. We had somebody who was like, there was a scammer, we called him like a scam lord, but it was something else that Carrie and I wrote about where somebody was like pretending to be the government and like filing these, like leaving papers at people's houses that they were like seizing their houses and would look up to see like who was behind on their taxes or whatever, but like if something seems off or seems unusual, you should definitely like listen to your spidey sense on that, because it is like amazing the kind of scams that people try to do with properties, really.
Maybe that's
I
a
could, go
policy
ahead.
change or issue, maybe we need to bring up with our common council or with, the county execs to at least put some protections there, at least, let people know if your file has been accessed. That might be helpful.
Or yeah, and they call them like dirty deeds sometimes, where people will try to like muck up your deed to just as like a kind of scam opportunity. Mhm.
Wow.
So happy to keep talking about property information, or look at any of the other sites, or I'm happy, kind of this next section talks about like writing your own records request if you're requesting, how to do that, or some tips for getting the information and the records that you want. But I'll leave it to the group if we should keep going, or the other stuff you want to talk about.
You can keep going.
Great. So by special request, all this means is that you're submitting a request, usually in an email, directly to a government agency, department, and you're explaining what you want. So some examples, as I mentioned, Milwaukee County has a records portal, so you can request court records through that. The Milwaukee Police Department, a simple request, I certainly think it's best just to try to go to the counter in District 3 when it's open, if it's just a very straightforward, incident report request. But if it's something maybe a little bit more involved, or you wanted to get all, for example, there's a troublesome tavern, you want to get all the police calls for service and associated incident reports, for example, that would be a special request that you would then email. And so some tips on when you're crafting this public records request. And my number one tip is, like, you should try to talk to someone at the agency first and explain what you're looking to get. They often can point you in the right direction, say what they keep, what they don't, explain some of the costs that might be associated with it. It is unfortunate that cost, like, clearly can be a barrier to getting public records at times. We work for a news organization that is great about paying for public records because we believe it's in the public interest to do that. But even we're always trying to negotiate and figure out what exactly we need and lower the cost.
Ashley, so what are some of these costs? Like, what are some examples, just to give us an idea?
So the biggest one that I run into is court records. Any court record, it's $1.25 a page.
Wow.
And so if you are, for example, getting transcripts of a hearing, and the transcript runs 90 pages, that's a lot of money, right? Even if you are getting a record emailed to you, they will charge you for it. Sometimes they will invoice you before they provide the record. We have an account. They can't, yeah, they can. As if you're doing this electronically. In fact, a lot of counties outstate have switched to a more of I assume it's like a bit of a privatized system. It's a third-party vendor that is across the country, and each county is setting their own rate for copies, but it's essentially like they will only take requests through that platform and through that third-party vendor. They will invoice you, then once you pay, then they will send you the record.
Wow.
So, but as you are writing requests, trying to get what you want to be specific and avoid using the phrase any or all. You want to use clear time frames, and you want to try to ask for records and not information. If you're doing a longer request, maybe over a period of longer amount of time, maybe you want to break it into like month by month, perhaps. And we'll get into some examples right here, for example. So, you could send a public records request to the city, and it could just say, how much money does the mayor make? But that's not asking for a record, right? That's asking for information. And obviously, I know we can Google this and and that sort of thing. That's pretty well known. There's public salary databases, but you could improve that request by writing, please provide records that show the mayor's 2024 salary, for example. Another one, let's say you were talking to the sheriff's office and who patrols the parks, and you wanted to know what happened at Sherman Park recently, like if there were any police responses there or any law enforcement response. Instead of just saying, what happened recently at Sherman Park, please provide reports about incidents occurring at Sherman Park between January 1st, 2025 through February 1st, 2025. And to be even better, but I was running out of space, like you would put perhaps the park's listed address, for example, because that also would help. So it's about trying to really narrow those requests. So this, we talked a little bit about it, but Mary, I was hoping you could talk a little bit about about waiting periods and what is actually required when we submit, like when a government agency is responding to a public request from anyone.
So Wisconsin's laws are a little vague, where they say that the agency has to respond as soon as practicable and without delay, which is not like a number of days, unfortunately. So a lot of agencies or offices will interpret that differently. Typically, if I haven't heard back within 10 days of just like acknowledging my request, I will follow up and say, like, did you get this request? Typically, a lot of offices will acknowledge your request within, a day or two, just to say, we received your records request and we're working on it. However, depending on how big the records request is, it is not something that you can like expect to get in 10 days. You can expect to hear back that they got it. But for example, when I was covering Act 10 at the Capitol, I asked for any threats to the governor's office and to lawmakers. And I filed different requests with different offices, but those were like months, because all of the lawmakers and governor were receiving like hundreds of threats, and some of them were under investigation and some weren't. And so that was something where, like, I would say about a year later, I got a disc, like an old school disc with like all of the threats. So, but that is a good way. It's a good reminder to, often you can narrow your request, and it's a lot easier to get something back and expand it versus asking for everything in the kitchen sink. So often, like if I'm doing a city request, I will say, ask for records to and from this person with these keywords in this month-long time period, and give the dates, and try to be as specific as possible to try to narrow that, with the idea that like I'll get some breadcrumbs and I can expand from there, versus if I ask for a year of records with everybody who's in like the health department or something, it's a really big department. That's a lot of people. So typically, specificity is your friend if you want to try to get something sooner rather than later. Did that answer the question, Ashley, or was there anything?
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean,
Yeah.
some states do have a certain time period in which, like, each state has its own public records law and standards. So we're talking specifically about Wisconsin. There may be times where you want to request something from a federal agency. And I want to say that I think it was whatever agency leads the Secret Service is like my record for longest records request. Like they sent me something 7 years later. I was like, do you still want this record? And it was like, no, I surely don't. Like,
Yeah.
no, the time has passed.
The nice thing about FOIA requests is some agencies, there's like a template online, and we could follow up and drop it in, or I could try to drop it in the chat or follow up later. But, or is that in there, Ashley?
I was going to say there is, well, I will find it, but in one of the earlier slides, it almost looks like a footnote. There's a link to some reporter resources that you all can use, and it's a template for other states and for Wisconsin, but also for other states.
So the federal records request, there's actually like a little online form, and you can say like, this is the agency I'm requesting for. And I've been using that a lot for OSHA requests about workplace violations. So if there's a company in your neighborhood or a company that somebody works for where you feel like you're hearing about a lot of worker injuries, for example, that can be a really useful tool because they track their records, and you can file a records request. You can see them online. So you can see if a certain business has a number of records requests, or I'm sorry, a number of safety violations or complaints. And then you can get those records linked to those complaints and see if they were fined and how much they were fined. And a lot of it's online, but you can also request like the documents related to it. So if there's a nuisance company or nuisance factory, that can be really helpful too.
And sometimes public records requests are denied. And here are some common reasons why. A big one is that it's overly broad. And this often happens when people are requesting just general information and aren't narrowing down for a specific record. So that's one where you would try, as Mary said, like narrow your request. Can you add keywords? Can you add specific locations? Maybe if you were asking about a neighborhood, maybe you want to ask about specific blocks or addresses. Sometimes they'll say there's no responsive record. And I strongly recommend you want to talk to the records custodian. So usually there's a records department, there's an administrator, there's someone who kind of processes these things. When you get your response letter saying, hey, or email saying, hey, it's denied, there'll be contact information on that. So you can use that to follow up and talk to them about, this is what I'm trying to find out. Can you identify like a record that does exist that would give me this information or that would answer this question that I have that I'm trying to learn about? And then a big one is redactions, right? So maybe you get the record back, but then you're disappointed because all this information is just blacked out. In Wisconsin and in other places, but in Wisconsin, it's in the law that there must be a reason why it was redacted, and they have to cite the section of the law. So some of those earlier things we were talking about, for example, like, oh, you might not be able to get this full request right now because it has identifying personal information, for example, like they would have to cite that. If there's an ongoing criminal investigation, they would have to cite that. And they usually, the wording they use is the balancing test, right? And they cite case law and they say, on balance, we think that the right for the public disclosure is outweighed by the need to protect our process and our investigation. And so you really want to look at those redactions carefully. I'll be honest, I used to get a redaction letter back or a denial letter, and I realize not everyone's as nerdy as I am about public records, but I initially would be like, okay, this case law, like I see this case law, I know this exemption, I'd run it by an editor. But now I like to read the case law. I like to look up the cases that they're citing because often you could make the argument that you can use the case law and make the argument, say like, no, this situation I'm talking about is actually, it proves my point that it should be released. And I've successfully done this twice, including with the Fire and Police Commission. And so it depending on what you're seeking and how much time you have to dedicate to it, it sometimes is good to just quick look up, hey, what was this case? There are so many legal sites online that give you synopsis of it that you can get a sense of like, hey, did they just like blanket denied, like copy and paste from another denial, or did they do something like that? So that it is worth it to see why they redacted it or why they denied the request. The same thing goes for the denial generally. Like they will tell you why it was denied if there was no responsive record, if it's overly broad, if it's redactions. Those are common reasons. And you can resubmit the request. The initial act of sending the public records request doesn't cost anything. if they are finding responsive records, they might send you an invoice or say, oh, it's going to cost X amount. I know Mary and I, when we send in a request, we always ask to be notified if the cost is expected to exceed like $50, for example, is usually what we use. So you can always put that in your request as well. Oh yes, they must cite the law they're using to withhold information in the redaction. So this is just an example of how you might narrow a request if you ask for any and all emails between the health commissioner and the mayor's office. But maybe what you're really interested in is like, you know, the issue of lead at MPS. So you could narrow such a request by saying, I'm actually interested in emails sent between the health commissioner and the mayor's chief of staff between these dates that include these words and keywords. You always want to put them in quotes. Again, that's just an example of how to narrow requests. When we were first giving these presentations a year ago, that was very much in the news and it was something people were interested in. So that's just an example of how to narrow it. And then, yeah, now we're kind of at the end. Again, like my number one tip is always call the records custodian before submitting a request if you can, if you're unsure about like what's available, if it's a new kind of request you're making. I have my contact info here. I will share it when I email. I'll drop it in the chat too. But Mary and I are happy to answer any other questions you have or go back to any other slides. And thank you again for having us.
Hi, this is Keontae. That was a great presentation. Thank you so much for you guys taking your time to do that. So question about the OSHA request. So that's still going to the same location or like which, because you said you go for criminal records in one department, you go for deeds in another department. Like what is the area or location if there was like specific requests like a OSHA or a company you were doing research on and the injury violation example that you used?
I'm just dropping that in the chat now,
Okay.
in case that wasn't one that we linked to. So it's
Oh, yes. Okay, thank you.
OSHA.gov. And then what you can do is you don't, if you know like a name, for example, of a company, like Palermo Via, I know is one that we looked up for Palermo's Pizza, but you can also look up by zip code if you're not entirely sure what like corporation name they're using, or you can try a few different ones and look them up in Wisconsin. And then, but if you enter that zip code and you can enter like a date range, which doesn't have to
Mary,
be.
do you want to take over the screen share and you're way more
Oh.
familiar with the OSHA one than I am. I could stop sharing.
Oh, sure. I could try to share if that works. Let me, or Ashley, do you want to pull that one up, that link? I can just walk through it. So I was
You would
like,
have to really walk me through it because I don't remember the last time I was
oh,
on
okay.
this
Yeah,
call.
no problem.
Let me see
But yeah, if you click on the OSHA.gov, sorry, I started like clicking through because I got excited talking about it. It's a really useful tool.
All right. Are you going to share or do you want me to?
Maybe you should.
Okay.
Yeah.
No one will judge you by your amount of tabs, least of all.
Oh my
me.
gosh, I have so many tabs. So here you go. So this is inspections through,
Okay.
they update it really regularly. So if you have a sense of what the establishment name is or what it might be, you can enter that establishment there. Yeah,
Should I just put in Palermo?
Yeah, Palermo space Via maybe, I think is what their corporate, like VILLA.
Oh, sorry.
Is maybe, I think that might be their corporate name.
Okay.
And then if you search Wisconsin, and you don't really have to enter that office, for zip code, I'm trying to remember which zip code they're in. I'll look it up really quick so I can give it to you. Palermo Via, I was helping someone look this up because there was someone who was killed, a man from East Troy, who was killed at one of their locations, at one of their factories. So it might have been, but it wasn't at their corporate headquarters. So, let me look up I'm trying to remember what the zip code was. I feel like it was at
Does
Maybe
it require us to enter the zip code?
53208, I think. I think it was at their Canal Street location, maybe.
Okay,
And
and
then
then
if
just
you do, yeah, you can leave
here.
that range. And sometimes you have to like play with it a little where you can change the names and
With the date.
yep, oh, here we go. Okay. Yeah, so you can look and see
So
that
what is this telling us, Mary?
that is so they'll show you what date it was opened, which is often if there's a complaint or a worker injury, it's opened around that date. It's not always the exact same date because sometimes they'll get a call and they'll go like the following day, but around that time. And then it'll tell you whether it was a complaint means like either someone called to complain or the ambulance came and a complaint was filed. Um, and then if you click on that hyperlink for activity on that case number, it'll have a little bit more information. And it shows that they do frozen specialty food, they do frozen pizzas. It was a safety complaint. It'll show you the address of like there's the site address and then the mailing address. Sometimes those are different if it's like a head different from the headquarters or the factory. This shows you it was closed, so the case is not open still. You can see that they were received a penalty,
Nice.
which typically will mean that they were in the wrong in some way, you know, if it's just like a worker incident. And then if you can also, there's a hyperlink, anything that's blue
Fun.
that's hyperlinked. So you can, if you click on that, it'll show you a little bit more. This shows that there was an informal settlement, so they kind of negotiated with OSHA to kind of work things out. And then, so this tells you a little bit more about one or more methods of machine guarding was not provided to protect the operator and other employees in the machine area from hazards such as those created. So basically, they didn't have the protections in place to protect their workers from, it looks like, rotating parts, flying chips. So the reason that they were fined is essentially because there was more that needed to be done to protect workers from injury from their equipment. But what you can do is now that you have this information, you can file a FOIA request, and there's a link which I can follow up with Ashley or try to find really quickly. But you can actually request like all of the documents and give them the inspection number and like what date it was
So-
issued. And
So
you
this
can
is what you would want to send them in your public records request. FOIA is also just a public records request. FOIA is just sort of the
freedom
federal
of
name for it.
information.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. But you can actually go and get, like, I've been able to, depending, it's a lot easier once the case is closed. If it's still open, they're still looking into it and it's harder. They won't typically give you the records. But once it's closed, you can go and file this Freedom of Information Act request. And you can often get like inspector notes. Sometimes you can get the complaint itself of what somebody was saying was wrong, which isn't always substantiated, but it can be really helpful. And then you can see, like, I was able to get like what the inspector noticed when they went to the factory. And we've had incidents where, an inspector goes to a factory and they notice like none of the machines are running, which is typically a sign that like the factory is trying to hide something. You know what I mean? If they shut down all their machines,
Oh, yeah.
the inspector shows up and everything gets real quiet. That's usually a red flag that they might be trying to hide something. But you can get so much more information that this is really helpful and this tells you a lot, but then you can kind of get like the information behind the information, if that makes sense.
Kind of like those attachments with the DNS
Mhm.
records.
Yeah.
It's helpful to get a record that gives you a little bit more of a narrative as to what happened.
And it's especially helpful if you have a company or a factory that's like, oh, we've never had a safety problem before. And it's like, well, and then you can look and find that's not necessarily the case. Or if it's like noise complaints or, toxic, like something where workers are getting sick because of chemicals in the air or dust or, and then like, that's definitely something that if you live in that neighborhood, something you want to know about.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so very much. This is actually very helpful for actually a
It
project
has
that's
been.
going on right now. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah.
good. Wow. All right.
All right. Were there any other questions? Don't speak at once.
Question about the street condition. I live in the shadow of St. Joe's Hospital, and when they expanded that front part, they replaced all of the concrete or pavement on their half of Burleigh and left the other. And now the side that wasn't replaced is full of potholes. And they keep filling them and then they empty them out again. And I'm just wondering to whom I could speak to have somebody check that or evaluate if it needs to be replaced, that one block.
So that to me sounds like DPW. And I also don't know how successful you all have been at using is it the My app, where you report the code violations and other problems? Has that,
Okay.
I mean, that might be one initial way to try that, but
Okay.
that also sounds like an Alder issue as well.
I was thinking about that. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
It's interesting that a private company did half the
I know.
street,
Isn't that
but not
weird?
all of it.
Uh-huh. That's very weird. I know, but that's what they did. So thank you.
So I do have another question. So Mary and Ashley, what are you all working on currently, as it relates to this public information, as it may relate to Sherman Park? What kind of stories are in the pipeline?
Oh, well, I'll be perfectly honest. Of the so this is an initiative that I started because it was tied to what we call Sunshine Week, a celebration of public records, and it's been really fun to do. We get story ideas when we go to these sessions. I mean, who knows what Mary finds out about the deeds and whether or not you can, protect themselves. That very well could lead to a story, right? In Metcalf Park, I think I shared some examples in another conversation. I could share them here. They were really concerned about the Wesley Scott senior apartments, and
Oh,
that
yeah.
has led to now I'm currently editing the fourth story that came out of that, because it's not just about the bad conditions at the apartment, right? Then it became about who owns it, and then it came, oh, this is a nonprofit and they're not paying property taxes, but are they really a nonprofit? Or
Yes.
and now I'm editing a story where we're talking to lawmakers about what are you going to do about this.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
so really, Mary and I are also at your disposal. If there's anything that you want us to look into, we're happy to. And if we're not the right people, we have so many talented colleagues who are pretty expert in their, what we call our beats, their subject areas, that we can connect you with them too. But really, I'm just continuing to offer public records because I think everyone should be able to know what's going on in their neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that.
Of course. Thank you again. I hope we're going to be back. I think we were talking about maybe coming to the Block Watch Captain meeting in February to talk about this stuff. So I hope we get to do that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Cool.
Thank you.
Excellent.
And one thing that Carrie, my coworker Carrie, who sadly retired, we were doing some stories on fraud and looking at primarily some Medicaid fraud in the prenatal care coordination company.
Yeah.
But as we were working on that, and a lot of the tips were coming from the moms who were, people were getting their Medicaid ID numbers and billing the state without providing services. We did hear, as we were doing that, we did hear some complaints about like group homes or adult family homes and homes that were getting, money, like getting a lot of funding, but not necessarily providing the care that was needed, leading to either poor supervision or poor care or police complaints. So that's something that I had been like poking around on a little, but yeah, we're pretty flexible. We're always looking for story ideas and tips. And so if you guys have any, we'd love to hear from you. And I know Ashley had her number in the presentation. Her email, and I dropped my email in the chat, and I'd be happy to, one of us would be happy to follow up with you guys if you have anything that you would like us to be looking into or any story tips.
You know what? My name is Tanya Hempel, right? And I actually have a group home that's right next door to me.
Okay.
And it was actually owned by Bell Therapy. And it was really nice because they used to do things with the residents and they used to take care of the property. But it has since been bought out by another company, and I cannot find out who this company is. They've had so many incidents over there. It was like 2 years ago. One of the workers was beat up by one of the residents and raped. And when I see like the people that are sitting in front of the property, I thought maybe it was like a drug center now. I mean, a drug rehabilitation center. They do have nurses there, you know. I don't know if they're nurses or if they're just babysitting, right? Because they're not doing anything. And do you know how I can find out who owns this property? Because I know that when we were during the summer, we did the RIME program, Mabel. And when we looked up that property, it had some information there, but when I tried locating that company, I hit a dead end.
I could definitely try to help you with that or steer you in the right direction. And if you want to follow up with me with like the address or any information about that one, I'd be happy to look into it.
Oh, definitely. I'll definitely reach out to you and give you the address.
Or Ashley too. Either would be happy to help.
Okay. You want me to put it in the chat or?
Oh, sure, that'd be great. And then we could start poking around on it.
43. It's got to be 40. I got to look at the number. I think it's 47, 50. Yeah, let me double check that.
Okay.
There we go. Sorry.
No problem. And we'll be around, and I think you have our emails and cell numbers now.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions or requests?
I have one. I know it's not a public record, maybe, but do you guys make much use of that database at Marquette with the landlord connections and all the LLC connections?
We do. John Johnson probably is tired of hearing from us. He is a wonderful researcher and very kind with his time. So yes, we do consult with him a lot. We do use that database a lot.
Great. Seems like it should be a big help.
It is. It really is. It is a point in time database too. So that's important to keep in mind as well. So sometimes when we want to go even farther back, that is when we have to take steps like Mary was describing and pull more records and do more of those special requests to DFI to get that history.
Have other neighborhoods made requests for special information? I know you mentioned Metcalf Park and the was it Scott building?
I'm entirely sure. Like I know Amani, there was a lot of interest and people had been talking about filing requests, and I encourage people if they ran into roadblocks to reach out to me. I have not heard. I know like some folks. One gentleman I was speaking with in Amani was very interested in requesting some records from MPS, for example, like very specific kind of maintenance records and that sort of thing. So I'm not sure, but if you all want to do that, or if there's anything we could be helpful with, just let us know. I do think organizations like yours have a lot of heft behind them. You know, it can help that it's not just one person submitting a request, you know, that it's, you know, Deborah Black from the Housing Committee with Sherman Park Community Association. You know what I mean? Like that can help, I think.
Sure.
Okay.
It shouldn't matter, but I think it can.
Identify our affiliation then.
Mhm.
I think so, especially if it's something you're going to be sharing with the group or something directly about your neighborhood, of course. Like, I think that, maybe you wouldn't do that if you were backgrounding someone who, something like that. But, if you're looking at property records, that sort of thing, I personally don't think it could hurt.
From covering City Hall, I definitely have noticed that aldermen and alderwomen take notice when their constituents are upset about something, and it lights a fire. It can light a fire under people because, districts aren't that big, and if constituents and people who vote for them start getting really upset about something, they take notice pretty quick.
Good to know. All right. With all of that said, it is 7:53. I appreciate everyone's time and energy and the questions and your enthusiasm and participation in hearing what Ashley and Mary are sharing with us. It's been invaluable. So thank you so much. And we'll be looking forward to getting those slides so that we also know how to connect into those specific websites. That would be very, very helpful for us. And I think what we may do too is we will put this on our website to share.
Yes.
I hope we might have to edit it. Might be some information in here that we mentioned that might need some edit, but if not, we will definitely make sure that we share it with residents. I think it's very helpful for people.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
And
Excellent program.
Continue to read your articles in the paper and enjoy them. Now we know people behind them.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right, Kay. You have a hand raised, Miss
Miss Redana. Miss
Mabel.
Redana has her hand up. I'm sorry, Miss Redana.
That's quite all right. Thank you so much. Very overwhelming, lots of information. My question is, I think I heard Anna say that it's being recorded. I can see that. How do I access the recording? Because I literally was driving the first 20 minutes. I had to pick someone up at the airport.
Good question.
Hi, Radana. It will be available on our YouTube channel. So I'll have Dave Redeman post it on our YouTube channel. And then once he does that, I can also probably copy the link and then send it to all of you guys as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, you're still informing me of something new. YouTube channel. What is it called? Sherman Park?
Sherman Park Community Association, I think. But we can send you that link as well once it gets posted.
Awesome. Thank you.
Tim, did you had your hand up?
I just want to thank Ashley and Mary and thank the Journal Sentinel. As an ongoing subscriber, I'm just so appreciative of all the reporting you're doing on so many different local issues. As a member of the Sherman Park Eco neighborhood team, I'm really appreciative of your colleagues who are doing such great environmental reporting. So thank you so much to the Journal Sentinel and to you.
Well, thank you. I'm definitely going to pass it on. That truly means a lot.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, good folks. Well, we thank you for your time again, and please tune in to our next webinar. We're trying to make sure people are educated and learning and armed and dangerous with information. So
It's just good information.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's the armed and dangerous with the information. Yes.
So thank you again for your time. And we hope to see you all soon. We do have another Housing Committee meeting next month, first Tuesday of February. So we hope you all will join us. And those of you who are a part of the NID or part of the ECO team will definitely, or Block Watch Captain, we hope to see you soon at one of our upcoming events as well.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you, Mabel and Anna.
All right. Thank you guys
everybody.
again. Mabel, Anna,
Thank you.
Mary, Ashley, Miss Keontae. I'm going to email you guys.
Good night.
Good. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
See you later, Dynasty.
Bye.
Bye.